welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. With the recent Heresy reveals at Warhammer Fest, we have it confirmed that only the 18 legions will be getting rules for the initial release of the new edition. There's no doubt a ton of disappointed players out there that are worried they won't be able to play their armies when the new edition drops. I'm keen to explore this decision by GW and what it means for the community. After I wrote this video up, we've actually had an article from GW letting us know what's going on. Well, kind of. Which is, it's something. I'm obviously not the only one thinking about this. I've made sure to include the tidbits we got from Warhammer Community this morning. Just a quick note before we get into it. As we're a new channel, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit those buttons down below. So what are we actually getting? Well, from the reveals, we know we're getting the big rulebook, looks like a hardback rulebook that's coming in the box set and will be available separately. On top of that, we have two separate books for the rules compendiums for both the traitors and the loyalists. Two books, one for traitors, one for loyalists. Each book will also include all of the generic units that those armies can take. These look super meaty, super impressive, pretty happy with them. Nice to have all those rules collected and collated. It'll be interesting to see how long they actually last in regards to relevancy and accuracy. Hopefully the answer is a long time. But the question is, where's our other factions? GW did say this in their reveal articles. They've said these tombs are just the beginning. There will be similar books for other factions in the future. Thank goodness. So, in the article we've just got today, they've also said each of the major factions waging war in the Horus Heresy will feature in their own books. Really cool to hear. So, Talons of the Emperor, that being the Custodes and the witchy ladies, they'll be getting their own book. The Mechanicum will be getting their own book. Imperial Armies, Solar Auxilia, etc. will be getting their own book. And then a book for demons as well. And a book for knights, by the sound of it. And maybe some other factions in the future. Who can say? So great to hear. Happy about that. Getting their own books means they'll get some super detail in them and some great rules. Really nice. Good to see they're taking it seriously. But when is the important part here that we still don't have answered. The article we got this morning also finishes with, we'll be able to tell you more about the support each faction can expect when we get closer to the launch of the new edition. So we at least won't have to wait too long to understand those timelines, hopefully. So teasers aside, this is a move out of character with GW's latest edition releases. Both Age of Sigmar, which had PDF rules for old factions, and 8th edition 40k, which had the 4 faction indexes, made sure you could play all of your old armies from day one. This has been a very important selling point for GW to make sure they don't enrage their players. So why haven't they followed suit with the new edition of Horus Heresy? Just quickly, to clarify for those new to Heresy, what we're talking about here is those armies that aren't one of the 18 legions. So the 18 legions are getting their rules on edition drop, but there's 4 key factions that are not. These are the Imperial Army, which include Solar Auxilia, Warp Cults, Militia, etc. You've got the Talons of the Emperor with the Custodians and their witch-hunting allies. You got Demons of the Ruin Storms, and then multiple flavours of Mechanicum. The Mechanicum in particular are extremely popular and well represented by 30k players. So a lack of Mechanicum on release is a bold choice by GW. I see 4 key reasons why GW has chosen to include only the Legion rules in the new edition. It could be just one of these, or it could be a combination of all 4. So, let's take a look. Number 1. Limited resources and time for design, playtest, and production. We know GW have been struggling with meeting their timelines during COVID, and it may have been a resourcing decision to get Horus Heresy 2.0 out earlier with Legion rules, rather than later with rules for all factions. The 8th edition 40k indexes, and especially the Age of Sigmar PDFs, were pretty half-cooked attempts to appease the community. They weren't great. It may be that GW have decided it's better to give armies the attention they deserve with a new edition, rather than rush the content out. There's certainly arguments for both directions, and with GW giving each of the factions their own book, this certainly seems to be the case. Number 2. Let's be honest. Forge World were never great at balancing their rules. They're always, and still are, very much all about the miniatures, with robust rules design coming a distant 5th or 6th in their priorities. The non-Legion factions in particular all suffered to varying degrees from being overpowered in comparison to their power armor wearing compatriots. I dare say GW was aware of this and wanted to make sure the same was not true of the new edition. With Legion sales being their main focus, the last thing they needed was for Imperial armies or custodes to take centre stage in any kind of competitive scene that develops. It is likely that GW were keen to see how the Legions performed out in the wild and what lists rose to the top before they put the finishing touches on balancing those more unique and diverse factions. Balancing a bunch of armies that all wear power armor and have access to 95% of the same units is not particularly complex. Chucking demons and armies of cybernetic monsters into the mix is a far bigger task. Number 3. The Horus Heresy is so intrinsically about the Legions and their Primarchs that it's likely GW wanted to maintain the purity of this narrative for the release of their new edition. They're hoping to bring in a lot of new players to Horus Heresy with the new edition, and including a bunch of non-Legion factions confuses and dilutes their product. Honestly, it kind of confuses and dilutes my YouTube channel, let alone branding and comms for the release of what is essentially, all things considered, an almost entirely new wargame for them. Number 4. This release, with its aggressively priced box set, is very much assuming that y'all are starting a new Legion. I know I certainly am. And considering my Choose a Legion video already has over 25,000 views, I reckon there's others out there like me. GW wants to sell these sets desperately, so they're not going to be too worried about you not being able to play your dual-hatted 30k, 40k demon army for those first few months. It's not a huge concern for them. Not to mention custodes. Ugh, no one feels sorry for custodes players. I'm kidding. I mean, kind of, not really. So, do I think it's a good move, or is it betraying large sections of the community? Here's my thoughts. I believe that GW have made the right call on this one, considering those 4 points I've now raised, and finally, considering the fact that you'll be hard-pressed to find an old-school Heresy player that doesn't have at least one Legion sitting around. I'm sure there is plenty of Mechanicum players out there, but I bet most of them have a cheeky power-armoured army sitting around that they can whip out for the new edition if they need to. The final question I wanted to address is, what do tournaments do in the meantime until the other factions get their rules with the new edition? Essentially, tournament organisers have 2 options here. The easy option is to simply say events are Legion only, using those rules that are designed for the new edition. All GW events will obviously go down this route, and it's certainly the cleaner option. The more difficult, but potentially more inclusive option, is to let players use non-Legion faction rules from the previous edition. Now, this is a bit awkward, as you're going to have outdated weapon stats, unit stats without movement values, and a lack of faction reactions will certainly cause issues. For these reasons, I'd probably go for option 1 if I was putting a Heresy 2.0 tournament together in those early days. Hopefully, when we find out a bit more of a timeline around those other factions, people will be able to make a bit more of an informed decision. If you're one of those players out there with only non-Legion armies and are not planning on starting a new army with the new edition, you're probably pretty upset about the whole thing. And look, fair enough. Let's just hope that GW get the non-Legion faction rule sets out as soon as possible. I myself would certainly like to see them released kind of no later than September this year. At least the key one, mostly being Mechanicum and Imperial armies. Let's get them out sooner rather than later. And that brings us to the end of our Heresy chats for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about GW's direction for only including Legion rules on release. Would you rather have all armies playable on release, or wait a little longer to ensure balance between the factions? Make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.